Trust in the UK is at an all-time low. Yet, this framework that I'm about to break down to you was still able to generate Michael 5 to 6 figure investor conversations with just 3 posts. So, if you're a developer and you're also interested about how you can increase your deal flow and how Michael was able to build authority in a market broken with skepticism, I've made this video for you. I've broken down this video into 3 main parts. The first part is where I break down exactly what it means to have a personal brand and what property developers are getting wrong. The second part is the main part of the breakdown, where I'm showing you the 3-step framework that I use with property developers and showing you exactly how you can use it and why it works. And finally, the third part is where I'm breaking down real-time case studies. I'm showing you exactly why and how it worked for Michael and how your favorite creators are using this framework too. So let's jump straight into it. And for context, I'm breaking it all down on my handy iPad. First things first, you guys need to understand what it means to actually have a personal brand. Personal branding was the buzzword of 2025. And in order for me to break this down to you, I need to take you to a time before the internet, right? Now, before the internet, personal branding still existed, but it was more commonly known as having a reputation. And a reputation was built from a stack of evidence and testimonials that proves that you were who you said you were, right? So people in your local community would vouch for you and your reputation would spread through word of mouth. But because of the nature of how your reputation was built, it was limited by geography and it decayed over time. Because the only way your reputation was stored or documented was through paper or word of mouth, like I said. But the problem is stories fade and documents get lost. But the modern adaptation of having a reputation is personal branding, right? Think of personal branding as your digital reputation now. The problem that I'm trying to explain though is a lot of people's belief systems are still aligned with how reputation used to previously be built back in the ways that I just explained. People currently believe that their experience should speak for itself, they can grind in silence and the results will be recognized, right? This is such a common UK mindset that, everyone tells you to grind in silence and let your actions speak for itself. But in reality, what that actually translates to is your experience now becomes invisible and your silence gets misinterpreted for irrelevance, because your credibility must be observed. Alex Hormozy puts this the most painful but perfect way. At the beginning, what any business is fighting tooth and nail against is irrelevance, right? So if you are not utilizing modern tools to fight that, you are going to stay irrelevant and your experience is not going to compound. Because I know, operators and developers that have got 10, 15, 20 years experience, but they choose to remain silent and now no one knows of them. Their experience doesn't compound and their network, doesn't benefit them because it's so small compared to others. So at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is, if your judgment isn't visible, trust cannot form, right? Trust cannot form. Because an investor isn't questioning whether property works. So what they're actually questioning is how you think, how you assess risk, and what you avoid, right? It's all about you. They're questioning you and your integrity. But if they can't see that anywhere, every meeting becomes a trust building exercise. You're constantly having to explain yourself instead of being pre-sold. And this is where people misunderstand personal branding. Because like I said at the beginning, your personal brand is your digital reputation, but building digital credibility is not about fostering attention. It's not about building popularity. It's not about going viral or becoming a guru. Because when you document how you assess deals, why you avoid certain strategies, where most people get it wrong, and your unique experience, you begin to build authority. And your personal brand becomes an asset you can leverage in every conversation. So again, your personal brand is your digital reputation. At this point, you should be able to understand this, and it's built from these 3 factors. Evergreen evidence, right? The point I made at the beginning is that documents and stories can be lost, right, or forgotten. But when you publish content, it doesn't disappear, and people can see it now, in 2 months' time, or even 2 years later. And in addition to this, visible and documented judgment, documenting how you think, what you avoid, and why, right? Positioning you as an authoritative person in the space. And both of these build pre-sold trust, where now you have fewer explanations, higher quality conversations, and less skepticism up front. The obvious question at this point now is, why are UK property developers still struggling with social media? Well, being a property developer is still hard. Your business slows down the minute you step away, delegating is destroying your margins, and UK laws are not making being a landlord any easier, meaning you're now stuck in the mud with your business, right? And this is what the UK property market currently thinks about social media and content. I've had so many conversations with people in the space. Trust me, this is what a lot of you guys think, that content is a waste of time and money, it's not a serious investment, and that you could do it on your own. Essentially saying there's no return on investment, right? That's what I hear in most conversations. And the truth is, content is not the solution to your problems. I'm not here to sell that to you, because every property page online looks the same. Surface level insights and repetitive podcast clips, dad style property walkthroughs, cinematic drone shots that don't do anything for you, and vlogs with no direction. So all this does is foster distrust, distrust in an environment where trust in the UK is already scarce. Trust is currency at this point, which kills your authority because of a lack of clarity in your brand and messaging, which is the most important thing, and I'll explain why later. So to recap this point, right? The problem here is that the content that every property page is providing, and people who are new to the space and want to start creating content, will follow these pages as a blueprint. So they'll start posting these podcast style clips, these dad style property walkthroughs, use cinematic drone shots and post vlogs and day in the lives that have no direction, that have no push. So all this does is, when this content fails, it fuels this cycle of hatred, having these negative beliefs about social media marketing and content, right? It fuels that cycle of distrust towards content. But the problem really lies in the fact that a lot of pages have failed before they've even started. Because what this really is posting without a strategy. But again, content is not the solution to your problems. But I hope you understand at this point now that building trust and authority with a clear system is. Because capital follows familiarity, not information. Please remember this. Capital follows familiarity, not information. Because before an investor is even asking about a deal, they're subconsciously asking, do I see this person often? Do I trust how they feel? Do they feel safe to do business with? So, if your content isn't engineered to build familiarity and trust in sequence, you'll keep posting whilst you stay stuck in your business. So the obvious question now is, how do you build a one-of-one personal brand in the UK property market? Because you should understand at this point, content does not create leads. It's structure that creates the deal flow. It's structure that creates deal flow, which is why I built the ABC framework, a simple 3-step framework that helps property developers build authority in a skeptical market and understand it simply. It's very simple. It's A, B, and C. And the 3 steps are audience building content, brand building content, and conversion driven content. And for the next main part of this video, I'll be breaking down each step. So the first stage, audience building content, right? The purpose of content during the stage is primarily to build visibility and credibility, right? And it's for the following reasons, which are quite obvious. We all understand that the UK property market has always been lucrative, and this is not going to change. But with this being said, if you have an offer or service within this niche and it's underperforming, I promise you 9 out of 10 times that this is an attention problem. Simply put, this means that not enough people know you exist. Not enough people know you exist. And it goes back to the point that what you're currently facing or what you're trying to beat is irrelevant. which is the exact reason why we start with this stage. It's to give your ICP a reason to care about who we are and what we do. Because people cannot trust what they don't see consistently. So audience building content will always follow this criteria. Audience building videos are short, they are informative, but most importantly, they're frequent. But before we move on, you need to understand these 3 points for this system to work. The first point being that content functions the same way as billboards, right? Frequency builds reputation. Imagine this, right? Imagine this story. A guy called Jack takes the same commute down the motorway multiple times a week, yeah, to go to work. And he always drives past a billboard on that journey. Now, he's driven past the same billboard 1, 2, 3 times and he's paid no attention to it. He's just focused about his journey. And each interaction with this billboard is 5 to 10 seconds because you're moving quite fast, right? He's doing 60 or 70 on the motorway. Comes to the 5th time and you notice a bright yellow cap. Yeah, I'm going to draw it out here. Oh man, this can be horrible. He notices a bright yellow cap. Yeah? A bright yellow cap. But that's all. Then he drives past it 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. And this yellow cap is so bright that he's now paying, and he's passed by it so many times that he's now paying attention, right? He's giving his attention whilst he's driving. Okay? And he knows every detail of this billboard, that it's a sunscreen brand called Sorel. It's a sunscreen brand called Sorel. Oh, that's horror. You get the point. He knows the business name. He knows that the sunscreen is SPF 15. It's great for his skin type. And it's endorsed by one of his favorite creators. But he doesn't do anything. Now, he passed by it 15 times. And that encourages him to go home and put it in his basket. The 20th time, it reminds him to check out because he didn't check out the last time. So he goes home and he checks out after the 20th visit. The reason I'm telling you this story is the point stands that frequency builds reputation. And it builds a picture of a customer journey, right? The customer journey when it comes to content is the same. It works the same as billboards, right? It took him 20 touch points until he actually made a buy. Now, don't misunderstand this. Because my second point is stop creating content to sell. The point of the billboard isn't to sell, but to nurture the customer's attention. Your content works the same. Too many people, not even just developers, people in general use content, organic content, to sell when it's not built for that. Because you have to understand that people do not come on social media to buy. You don't go on social media to buy. I don't go on social media to buy, right? And if you buy anything, it's those like £3 things on TikTok shop, right? It's nothing else. When you work with investors, you're expecting them to invest 5 or 6 figures on a project, right? They're certainly not coming on social media to do that. So stop creating content to sell. Because my third point is that it shows, right? Kill your thirst for ROI because you look and sound like a guru and it's disgusting, right? Not even a guru, you look and sound like a salesperson and it's disgusting. It shows. When you're constantly pushing for the sell using organic content, it shows, right? You should be selling during private conversations when you start generating inbound DMs and taking them off the social platform. So now we understand why audience building content works. I'm going to explain how it worked for Michael. So how did Michael turn these 3 videos into multiple 5 and 6 figure investor conversations? Yeah. Well, start from the beginning. Like most developers, Michael's investor conversations were limited to people he already knew, one-off introductions, and slow manual relationship buildings. And the thing is, credit to Michael. Every single week I spoke to Michael, he was at a different networking event most days. Right? He did everything to put himself out there. He's learned everything about the game. Right? He's taught me so much about property just by working with him. But this is the thing about what I was speaking about at the beginning and how experience doesn't compound alone. In other words, he was capable, right? But again, invisible to anyone outside his immediate circle. No inbound, no leverage, no consistent investor attention. So what changed? right? What changed? We focused only on audience building content. No pitching, no promotion, just clear positioning. What did I say at the beginning? A lot of you guys are losing because of a lack of clarity in your brand and messaging. So we focused on clear positioning. And so the results were multiple inbound DMs, 5 and 6 figure conversations, and investors initiating contact, which in my opinion is the most important thing because it shows that he's built authority, enough authority for investors to recognize him and reach out. And these are the results. I'm really happy with Mike. I'm looking forward to this new year. He's the main reason why I'm making this video, because I want to help so many more people, and I'm going to be working a lot closer with him as the year goes on. But these are the results when you apply audience building content correctly. But after building familiarity, how do you build trust, right? Because trust is currency. Well, brand building content. Like I said at the beginning, personal branding was the buzzword of the year. Brand building content is just the personal in branding. And this is where you go from, again, familiarity to trust. And how do you do this? Well, you showcase your beliefs, your story, and your experiences. Because at the end of the day, people are emotional buyers, right? People are emotional buyers. Please remember that. People are emotional buyers, not logical ones. So investors are investing into people and their ideas, not a business. I'm going to repeat it again. Investors are investing into people and their ideas, not a business. Your business is just the vehicle for your idea. And this is where developers get wrong, because they misunderstand this. And so immediately all they do with content is they post just value-oriented content, right? Just value-oriented content, and it's surface level, and it doesn't provide any additional value. There's no lead magnets, there's no follow-ups, nothing. Or they skip everything and immediately start selling with their content, right? And what did I say at the beginning again? Stop selling with content. And these are the problems you make when you misunderstand A, that people are emotional buyers, not logical ones, and B, when you don't have a framework. Because the thing is, there's nothing wrong with value-oriented content, but if this isn't assisting a wider system, there's no point. It doesn't funnel anywhere. And so, because of this, all of their associations are tied to the business. Without their business, they're no one. Now, what do I mean by associations? To keep it simple, because I could make a whole video about this, is what do people think about when they think about you? If you post a lot of tennis content, when people see you, they're going to immediately think about tennis. That's what I'm talking about in simple terms, right? So if all you talk about is selling your service, or if all you talk about is surface level value that you have to deliver, they're going to associate you with distrust because your value isn't essentially correct or authoritative or isn't delivered properly, or again because all you're trying to do is sell to them when they don't even know you. And this is the point of personal branding, of brand building content, to help them get to know you, because who you are really going to attract, again because of your associations, are the business crazy entrepreneurs who love business content and not investors interested in finding people to invest in. Showing who you are outside of the business is important because it humanizes your brand. It gives people material to connect with. Yeah? The aim at this stage isn't to bring in new followers, but to nurture your current following. However, a lot of developers quickly forget the purpose of content once they start creating. Vlogs and behind the scene clips are great, but you don't want to dilute the authority you are building. Now, I could go on to explain this, but I've broken down another example that showcases this perfectly, of how you can use brand building content but not dilute your authority at all. This is a household name, Iman Gadzhi, right? Okay, cool. Some of you guys may not know who this is. If you're clued in with personal branding in the online space, you know who Iman Gadzhi is. But for context, he's an online entrepreneur who's invested and founded a ton of companies, and he's the pioneer of personal branding and the pioneer of social media marketing, right? So how has he built this authority? In his content, He showcases everything about his team and who he works with, as well as his company and what he's doing, every corner of it, right? Right now he's in a position where he's accumulated enough wealth to start buying and investing into companies. In this scenario, there was an episode where he's investing multiple figures into a company called WAP, right? And he's showing this whole investment journey. This massive place in the background is an office they've just bought. You get it? So he's showing everything, yeah? Next, you've seen him grow up, and people resonate with the passion of providing for your mother, providing for your parents, right? His sole aim was to provide for his mum. And moving forward, he's documented everything since he started. From a teen to now with the Lamborghini. He's documented everything. And these 2 points are really important because viewers who are watching his content can immediately resonate because A, they resonate with this passion, but B, they've built trust with his process because he hasn't hid anything. Next, the aesthetic. He owns the old money aesthetic, right? When you think of Iman, you think of the aesthetic. When you think of Iman, you think about providing for your parents. When you think of Iman, you think about the businesses he's invested into, right? When you think of Iman, you think of this red and blue lighting. It got to a point where video editors on Fiverr and Upwork, and you can go and search it now. One of their main services was, I can provide Iman Ghazi style editing. I can provide Alex Hormozy style editing, right? This style became his niche. It became what he was known for. This red and this blue lighting, the minute you saw it in someone's video, you go in the comments and they get called out like, oh, you're copying his style, right? Because the minute you see this, you think of Iman. Same with the old money aesthetic, right? The cars, the horses, the watches, fishing, all associated with his brand. Even his eyewear brand, associated with luxury. All of these things tie back to who he is and what he represents, right? And all of these things build authority and build trust, right? You can imagine being associated with these things. Of course it would build authority, right? Of course providing for your mother would build authority. Of course documenting everything would build authority. Of course attaching your brand to this aesthetic would build authority, right? But how does he do this? Well, this is how he uses the ABC framework too. And he's not my client, but all of your favorite creators, everyone that you research that is using content correctly is going to be using this framework. Audience building content, tutorial based content, value based content where he's showing his audience how to succeed with business. Brand building content, again, showing the behind the scenes of investing into companies and being a billionaire, right? Showing every corner of his business. And these are 30-40 minute short docs. He's invested value into this. But finally, conversion driven content. He doesn't sell in these videos, by the way. He doesn't sell in these videos. Conversion driven content, the CTA is in the form of copy in the description. And it's not selling to anything to buy. Right? You can see here, free ticket. Because his CTAs always add more value. Whether it's a lead magnet, a webinar, a masterclass. He's always looking to add more value to his audience, which pushes his audience further down the funnel. I hope you've understand this example really well. If you don't, drop me a DM or comment. But this moves on perfectly to our next section, conversion driven content. And I'm going to teach you exactly how to use it. So the final stage of this framework is conversion driven content. And this is where we're turning trust into conversations. We're generating inbound DMs, warm conversations with investor-led questions. But I need to stress at this point, conversion driven content should only exist as stories, highlights, or sometimes carousels, right? But primarily stories and highlights, because this is where your followers are active. These are where your followers are actively engaging with your profile, with your content. And the format for conversion driven content is simple. Provide some sort of narrative, follow some sort of narrative, provide a proof of concept, and then a call to action, right? But although this stage is called conversion driven content, if you learn one thing from this video, stop trying to sell with organic content. Stop trying to sell. The whole purpose of conversion driven content is to start and encourage warm conversations with a qualified audience, to filter your followers from people who just enjoy your content and qualified leads, qualified investors who are ready to work with a developer like you. And how do you do that? Well, you follow this format. Again, narrative, proof of concept, call to action. And the call to action is always directing your audience to some form of additional value, whether that's like a free consultation, whether that is a lead magnet of some sort, so a webinar, a masterclass, a free PDF. Always be trying to add value and provide value for your audience. That way you're still maintaining authority, you're still fostering trust, and naturally these investors will become warm leads and will want to work with you because you provided so much value. So now you've answered the questions they were asking at the beginning. Do I see this person often? Do I trust how they think? Do they feel safe to do business with? Right? You've built so much trust that you look like the natural solution. Using the correct systems, funnels and automations with your lead magnets, pairing them all together, you're able to bring warm leads and start private conversations with them. Inbound DMs, warm conversations, right? Where you can begin to now sell, where you can now begin to push them further down the pipeline, right? But selling with organic content is not going to work because they haven't come on social media to buy. Conversion-driven content allows you to create a space where you can bring your followers off of social media and speak to them one-to-one and address their problems and needs and add more value if they need to, address any more curiosities that they have, and then provide a solution that they want. That's the sort of relationships that you want to be building with your followers, with the investors that follow you. And that is how you use conversion-driven content. Stop trying to sell content. That is the end of the breakdown. I've been Sean Damry, and I hope you guys have gained a ton of value. The reason why I made this video, because I've enjoyed making this a lot, and the reason why I made it is because after meeting Michael and after speaking to so many people online and in person, I've understood now that there are a lot of property developers out there who are struggling with breaking into the market, who are struggling to push past bottlenecks and don't understand how to start, especially when it comes to content and content strategy, right? And the one thing I want to say is that if you are a property developer and you're experienced, right, but I described you earlier as invisible, just know that you've got everything to give. And if you're a property developer and you've got not a lot of experience, just understand you've got nothing to lose and everything to learn, right? So I made this video so you guys especially can use this as a blueprint for your content and strategy in 2026. If you've got any more questions, comment them in the comment section or DM me on Instagram at sean.damry and I'll get back to you. I'll see you guys in the next one.